Let the swamp hear my words. Let this black water bear witness. As long as I draw breath, not one of my sons, neither William nor Samuel, shall be allowed to leave this parish. Let them try. Let them dream. And you, O spirits, close every road to them. They were born here, and they will die here. This curse will also fall upon my grandchildren. It was the fourth consecutive night that Pastor Michael was awakened by his own screams. But tonight was different. He had seen a woman. She was wading alone through a dry, muddy field, a blunt machete in her hand, hacking at the tall, invisible grass. In each of her gestures, there was a strange power, as if she were pushing back something no one else could see. As she advanced, the ground beneath her feet grew darker, but she did not retreat. She continued to clear the path, her hands bleeding, whispering, "Perhaps I will not win, but I'm opening a path for my children, so they do not have to walk in darkness as I have." Pastor Michael wanted to speak to her, but his throat was locked. He was only a witness. And just before everything faded, the woman turned to look at him. Her eyes shone with an unearthly light. At that moment, Michael awoke, drenched in sweat. The next morning, he sent a voice message to one of his congregants, Daniel. He had been praying with him for a month. Michael had never met the woman from his dream in real life, but a divine intuition told him it was Daniel's mother. She had passed away many years before, unacknowledged, unrested. Daniel called the pastor back immediately. She said her fight was not for herself, but for her children, Pastor Michael said. On the other end of the line, choked sobs could be heard. Daniel replied, "She used to say that even before she died." It was the beginning of unearthing memories, the beginning of the truth. The woman who had given them life had faced a lineage where curses were passed down like an inheritance. This is the story of Eleanor. When she stepped down from the old pickup truck that had stopped on the red gravel road with her husband Samuel by her side, all eyes were on her. Not a single smile, not a word of welcome. Eleanor walked forward carrying her suitcase, her eyes fixed on the horizon of Blackwater Parish, which was to become her home. A few days earlier, Samuel and his uncles had come to her house to ask for her hand in marriage. She was young, still full of hope. Samuel had described the town to her as a peaceful corner where ancestral spirits watched over them, where the land was fertile and where the elders blessed the marriages. But as soon as she crossed the rickety wooden fence that marked the entrance to the family property, she understood that what she had been told was not entirely true. An old woman was standing there straight, despite her age, her arms crossed over her chest. Mama Odette, Samuel's mother. Her eyes were as black as night and as sharp as a razor. Not a word, just the way she stared at Eleanor as if she were something threatening. "Is this her?" was all she said. Samuel, looking uncomfortable, nodded. "Yes, Mother. My wife." Mama Odette turned on her heel. "This one we'll see." Eleanor entered the room that had been assigned to her. Samuel caressed her hand, whispered a few sweet words, and left to get some water. It all began when night fell. Eleanor had just sat down on the edge of the bed when a soft voice called to her from the darkness. "Daughter-in-law, come here." She opened the door. Mama Odette was standing there alone as if she had stepped out of the shadows. She beckoned her into her room. "Sit down," Mama Odette said. Eleanor tensed and obeyed. Mama Odette stared at her for a long time before speaking in a calm voice. "Down here in this bloodline, weak women are swallowed by the swamp. You have to give something, share what is asked of you, accept the pact." Eleanor didn't understand. She frowned. "What pact?" The old woman smiled a smile that held no warmth. "The real marriage. The one that takes place not before the living, but before those who sleep beneath the cypress roots." She held out a small dark earthenware vial. "Drink and I will show you how to survive here." Eleanor's throat was dry. "No, I came here to love, not to—" "Then you will wither and die," Mama Odette whispered. That night, Eleanor refused. She left the room trembling. For having defied and refused the pact, Mama Odette made Eleanor's life a living hell. For 5 years, she never once felt the seed of life grow within her. From then on, the women in town began to whisper. She's an outsider, one said. Maybe she left some unresolved debt back home, added another. Or maybe the old woman blocked everything, a younger woman dared to say. But Mama Odette didn't need to speak to quell the rumors. One glance from her was enough. Throughout the town, her name carried a weight that no one dared to mention lightly. No one dared to cross her. No one dared to refuse any of her requests. In the 6th year, when hope had all but dried up in Eleanor, when her body had grown accustomed to the monthly emptiness, something changed. She felt life stir within her, a gentle flutter like the beating of a butterfly's wings. She told no one, not even Samuel. The joy was too fragile, too precious to be exposed to the prying eyes of Blackwater Parish, and especially to the black eyes of Mama Odette. She waited, holding her breath through each week, as the familiar pains did not return, as the strange dreams of swamps and shadows gradually faded. One Sunday afternoon, during a prayer meeting held outside the town, in a simple wooden chapel nestled among the cypress trees, Eleanor stood in a corner, her hands unconsciously clasped over her belly. Pastor Michael, the man with the piercing eyes who had appeared in her dreams, approached her. "Through this child," he said, his voice deep and steady, "the chains will be broken. Through him the impossible will become possible, and she whom they call barren will give birth to the reversal." Eleanor trembled, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. "Your battle is not in the womb," he continued. "It will be in the spirit. They will try to attack you where the child cannot yet defend himself. But remember, you were not chosen to bear a child. You were chosen to bear a crack." By the 4th month, when her small belly could no longer be hidden, Mama Odette watched her intently in the courtyard as Eleanor drew water from the well. Then she simply said, "That boy, he will be born." Eleanor didn't answer, but a cold fear rose in her throat. It was not a blessing. It was a sentence. The belly grew. The looks changed again, but Eleanor remained on guard. She slept little, for, in her dreams, she saw the same child, but in different contexts. Sometimes the baby was in chains, sometimes in a blinding light, and sometimes in the arms of Mama Odette. The night before she went into labor, Eleanor had a dream that made her scream in her sleep. She saw a paved highway cutting through lands she did not know, and a man was walking alone, a suitcase in his hand, but behind him, shadowy figures followed from a distance. As he moved forward, a voice repeated, "It is not yours, it does not belong to you." She woke up drenched in sweat and her water broke. The labor was long, the pain relentless. The old women of the town surrounded her, murmuring ancient prayers. But it seemed they were not praying for her, but for Samuel. He was kept outside. Mama Odette had said he was not allowed to enter. And when the child finally slipped from his mother's womb, his cry was a defiance of death, and a silence fell over the room. Samuel entered, knelt and wept. He named his son Daniel, but Mama Odette, she refused to repeat the name. She whispered in Eleanor's ear low enough for only her to hear, "That boy is not for you." And the next night, when everyone was asleep, Eleanor discovered a circle of black powder sprinkled around the baby's cradle and a streak of dried blood-like red on the flagstone near the door. She understood what it meant. This child, she would have to protect him with her life. Some time later, an unexpected opportunity arose in the form of a job. Samuel was hired as a teacher at a school in the neighboring parish, the very place where Eleanor had received the prophecy about her son. For Eleanor, it was a release, a door opening out of the darkness of Blackwater Parish. They moved together, taking little Daniel with them, and for a while, life seemed to have found a normal rhythm. One Sunday, they decided to go to the wooden chapel to dedicate the child to give thanks to God. Pastor Michael, upon seeing the baby, said nothing at first. He took Daniel in his arms and looked at him for a long time. After a silent prayer, he placed the child back in his mother's arms and said, his voice low and serious, "This child is a crack in the chains of the bloodline, but the chain is not broken, it is only stretched." He looked them straight in the eyes, especially Samuel. "If you return to the place where it was forged, it will close. I am not talking about a dream," the pastor insisted. "This is a directive. Do not go back there." Eleanor understood immediately. He was talking about Blackwater Parish, about Mama Odette. But Samuel clenched his fists. "We can't turn our backs on our roots just because of a pastor's words," he protested, his frustration evident in his voice. 4 years passed in a semblance of peace. 4 years of distance, the chains seemed to have been forgotten. Daniel grew into a bright, lively boy, unaware of the shadow that lurked over his destiny. Samuel was dedicated to his work, and Eleanor had found enough peace to believe that perhaps the pastor's warning was just an overabundance of caution. Then one day Samuel received an unexpected visit. A man from the school board of his home parish came to see him. "The principal of the community school in Blackwater Parish is retiring," the man said. "He said he was looking for a young, educated person to replace him, and he knows you are from there." Samuel hesitated. "Why me? He doesn't even know me." "He was recommended by an acquaintance," the man replied. "A matriarch in the town." Samuel didn't make the connection to his mother. He thought it was God's providence, a blessing brought by Daniel. He accepted the offer without consulting Eleanor. When he told her the news, Eleanor's face turned pale. Blackwater Parish. "But do you remember what Pastor Michael said? The child is not supposed to... So we're going to turn down a good job with a good salary because a pastor had a premonition." Samuel snapped, his frustration overriding his reason. "Do you want us to starve in a rented house far from home?" Eleanor didn't answer. That night she dreamed of a giant cottonmouth snake slithering around their house, circling again and again, its head raised, watching, but never striking. A suspended threat, a pending sentence. And so they returned. 4 years after their escape, Eleanor once again crossed the rickety wooden fence of the property in Blackwater Parish, leading her son by the hand. Mama Odette was waiting, sitting in her armchair on the porch. She didn't look at her son or daughter-in-law. Her eyes were locked on the child, and for a brief second it seemed her lips were moving without a sound. Eleanor felt the invisible vice tighten around her. The fight had begun again. At first the return seemed like the right decision. Samuel, as principal, received the respect he had always craved. He left early and came home late, talking about the future, about building a solid brick house to replace the rickety wooden one. Daniel seemed to thrive too, his laughter echoing in the yard, a rare, clear sound in this place. Eleanor wanted to believe it. She longed to believe in this peace, but she knew something was still lurking in the shadows, like the cottonmouth in her dream. Then she became pregnant again. When Eleanor announced the news, Samuel merely replied, "God's will be done." There was no joy, no excitement, just a resigned acceptance. Despite the fatigue, the sudden fevers, and the sharp pains, the baby held on. For 8 months, Eleanor endured. In the 9th month, labor began painful and violent. But one early morning, a cry pierced the oppressive air. A beautiful baby girl named Amelia. A semblance of peace reigned for a few months. Then the illness began. One evening, Samuel came home with a dizzy spell. The following week, he could no longer walk. Black dark patches began to appear on his back like dried mud on his skin. His skin cracked, revealing raw flesh underneath, and soon a foul smell began to emanate from him, the smell of decomposition. The town elders came. They spoke in low voices, whispering forbidden words. Eleanor refused to believe what they were implying. But one evening, while changing the sweat and pus-soaked bedsheets, she saw something she couldn't explain. A piece of her husband's skin had stuck to the fabric. She stood there, her hands trembling. Samuel began to call out his mother's name in his sleep. One night he suddenly sat up, his eyes rolled back, and screamed, "She's eating me from the inside." And in the next room, Mama Odette was humming softly, a lullaby that chilled to the bone. Samuel weakened quickly. His body was nothing more than an open wound. They had to line his back with cool Spanish moss to prevent maggots from spreading to the floor, but nothing could stop it. He was rotting while still alive. And yet Mama Odette shed not a single tear. She watched over him in silence, her hands clasped. And one day she said to Eleanor calmly, her voice devoid of emotion. "It is the blood of the man that protects the lineage. It has chosen to protect you." She looked directly at Eleanor. "It knows what it's doing." The next day, Samuel breathed his last. He barely had a face left, just a mass of blackened, cracked flesh. His body was wrapped in an indigo linen cloth, placed on a mat, and buried quickly. At the funeral, Mama Odette stepped before the crowd and spoke, her voice echoing ominously. "You think I killed my son?" she asked directly. "You think I nourished my own flesh only to devour it later?" No one answered. "But which of you carried him for 9 months in your womb? Who fed him, bathed him, loved him? Who saved him from malaria when he was 2? She paused, her eyes sweeping over the crowd. "Does the mother pelican not pierce her own breast to give her blood to her young when they are thirsty? If that is what you believe, then I am that pelican. Whoever judges me, let them come and break my bones now." She glanced quickly at Eleanor and turned away. A murmur ran through the crowd. The elders bowed their heads, but no one dared to contradict her. A week after the funeral, Mama Odette confronted Eleanor and said in a voice as cold as ice, "My son is dead. He has returned to the earth. He has paid for a mistake that was not his." She turned to Eleanor. "He left you an heir, but do you know for whom that child was born?" Then she walked away. Eleanor stood there, her heart feeling as if it had stopped. She finally understood. Samuel's illness was not a punishment. It was an exchange. And she knew that her fight had only just begun. Samuel's death left a void, but not silence. The whole town whispered rumors, spreading like wildfire across a dry field. Some said it was witchcraft, others that it was the price to pay for marrying a foreign woman who had refused to follow the ancient customs. After Samuel's death, the house became a place of silence and echoes. Years passed, the children grew up. Eleanor cared for them with a resigned tenderness. But Daniel, he was no longer the same. At 17, he had the eyes of an old man who had seen everything. He slept little at night. When he did sleep, he was drenched in sweat and sometimes whispered in his dreams. And one name always came back: Mama Odette. There was something he had wanted to say for a long time. One evening, as his mother sat on the porch, he stood before her. "Mother," he said, "I don't want to die here." Eleanor looked at him for a long time. She asked only one question. "You want to leave?" He nodded and sat down beside her. "I can't sleep anymore. Father talks to me, and sometimes I see grandmother sitting at the foot of my bed." A shiver ran down Eleanor's spine. "I know you're still young. The world out there is not easy. What is here is no longer worth living. I know you're hiding things from me that you still pray in the dark. I feel things I don't understand. I have to go, Mother." She wanted to stop him, to tell him he was exaggerating, that he was just scared, that it was just a dream, but she remained silent because she knew he was right. The next day, Daniel spoke to a man, an old Cajun named Boudreau, a broker who went between the parishes. It was said that he had connections everywhere, knew the secret paths, had solutions. Daniel only exchanged a few words with him at the market, but the man had recognized something. "I can't promise anything," Boudreau said, "but we'll see." One day the old man called for him, and the escape began. Daniel disappeared in the night. Eleanor knew it even before she opened his door. She felt the absence as one feels the wind before the rain. For months there was no news. Then one January morning, an old teacher came to the house. He gave her a letter. "They say this is for you. It came from a community center in the city." She opened it. "I'm still alive, but I can still feel my grandmother's breath on my neck. I'm praying, I'm trying, but don't tell her I'm alive. Never speak of me to Mama Odette." Each letter carried the same fear, the same silence. Eleanor never replied. She prayed. She hid each message in a rusty tin box, hidden under the floorboards in the kitchen, away from prying eyes, away from listening ears. For she knew one could run from a town, but not from the call of blood. Time passed and Eleanor fell ill. Eleanor's last months passed slowly. Amelia, her daughter, now 15, cared for her. The girl had grown up too fast. She had learned to be silent, to observe. She knew her mother was suffering, but she never asked questions. One evening, Eleanor took her daughter's hand. "Amelia, listen to me. I don't have much time left. When that old woman dies, your deliverance will begin." Amelia blinked. "Are you talking about grandmother?" Eleanor nodded. "She has held everything, even what was not hers. Don't cry when I'm gone. Keep your eyes open, because what I have been through must not follow you." A week later, Eleanor breathed her last. 3 months passed. Then one evening, the oil lamp hanging in front of Mama Odette's door, the lamp that had been lit every night without exception, was not lit. The next morning, Mama Odette was found in her bed, straight like a funeral statue. But it was not her death that shocked the town. It was what happened next. The coffin had been placed in her room easily the day before. But the next day, when they wanted to carry her body out into the yard, the coffin refused to go through the door. It had become too wide. It was stuck in the doorframe as if the door had narrowed, or worse, as if the wood itself had swollen during the night. Many men tried. They pushed, they turned, they lifted. In vain. "She doesn't want to leave," someone whispered. So they had to break the coffin into pieces with axes and hammers. The wood splintered on the floor. Her body was still intact. They placed her on an old blanket and carried her to the grave. That night the whole village heard screams in the yard. It was not the sound of animals, nor of the living. In the darkness, small, gaunt figures glided by. Their faces were those of wrinkled, toothless old men. They howled in unison like a single breath, then disappeared into the bushes, as if sucked in by the darkness. A week after the earth had embraced Mama Odette, William, her second son, who had been unemployed for over 10 years, received a call. "We found a lost file," a voice said. "We are still interested in your profile. There is a position available. Are you available for an interview?" The change did not only come for him. The next day at the market, a woman who had been considered barren for a long time felt strange pains in her lower abdomen. 3 weeks later, she confirmed the impossible. She was pregnant. The chains were broken. 5 years had passed since the screams from the coffin, since the name Mama Odette was no longer spoken aloud. Daniel returned on a day in the dry season. No one recognized him at first. He went to Eleanor's grave and sat there for a long time. Then he got up and went to the house next door. There he found Amelia, now a wife and mother. She didn't have to say his name. She opened her arms. He took refuge there like a child. Amelia's twin children were playing nearby. The path had been cleared. It had been cleared with sacrifice, pain, and refusal. Eleanor had been right. She had not won the war, but she had opened the way. And now her children, her grandchildren, and the children of her grandchildren were walking without chains. The heaviest chains are not those we see, but those we inherit. Breaking a vicious cycle of curses sometimes requires disobedient suffering and resistance where others have surrendered.